Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the McKinney. This is their part number T4A4395. This is a swing clear hinge, and I have one right here in my hand. It is an unusual variant of this, though, in the sense that, well, swing clear is certainly not by any means the most common of hinge that you'll bump into, but they are certainly a very typical hinge that you'll see specified when you have to have a minimum clear opening requirement. Generally, that's what they're going to be used for, so that you can achieve the minimum clear opening requirement of 32 inch, so that the door completely gets outside of the opening, and that's accomplished by, of course, how the vertical axis of pivoting is relocated from where it would normally be. But this is a great example of something that McKinney does very well. They do hinges for square edge doors, but they also do hinges, that same hinge, for beveled edge doors. And the T4A4395 is means that it's intended for a beveled edge door. And you can see how those two leaves are not parallel, but up here they're actually parallel. It's down here where that 3-degree bevel falls on that leaf that's going to get attached to the door. And that's not all. It actually gets a little bit less extremely now unusual. So swing clear, not a big deal. Beveled edge, yeah, you have to know if it's beveled or square edge when you're doing this kind of work. However, this has a radiused corner. This radiused corner is what we would call 5/32 of an inch, is what that is. So if you're familiar with radiused corner hinges, you're going to know that they're either 1/4 inch radius or 5/8 radius. Well, this is neither. This is 5/32 radius. This is a radius that you'll see exclusively, in my experience, on aluminum storefront. And the reason that that's happening is because you're going to have a 10/32 of an inch diameter bit that is cutting the aluminum frame for the preparation, for the hinge prep. So 10/32 would be the diameter, also known as basically 5/16. So they're going to use a 5/16 bit when they're literally cutting the aluminum for the hinge pocket, the frame and the door. If you don't go back and square the corner, in this case with a file, you'll be left with a 5/32 radius. It's the same logic that when you are working on wood doors and frames. If you've got a 1/4 inch radius, that means that there's a 1/2 inch diameter router bit that's been used to route the hinge mortises. If you don't go back and square those corners, you're left with the radius. 5/8 radius would be an 1.25 inch diameter bit. Now, pre-hung or pre-hanging shops that are building pre-hungs, they like to use that 1.25 inch because the tool path is less. It's just moving that router bit really in just one easy tool path, whereas with a 1/2 inch bit, you've got to route, and you've probably got to make that sort of prep rather than just this. You don't go back and square the corners, you're left with the radius, which means you're going to need a radius corner hinge. Now, the confluence of it is 5 inch, swing clear, beveled edge, 5/32 radius corner. In 30 plus years, I've never sold this hinge. But this client does a lot of work on the West Coast. Why do I mention the West Coast? Aluminum frames are really common on the West Coast. With wood doors, not a big deal. It's going to work out just perfectly. You've got two choices on these hinges. Get them with 5/32 radius, or you're going to be filing out the corner. And you don't want to do that on aluminum because it's a lot of filing on aluminum. It's very inelegant to do that. What would be the most elegant way is get the hinges to be radius. Now, admittedly, all the factory's doing, and I've never seen it done in a factory setting like McKinney or other manufacturers, but I can tell you that if you ordered this hinge and you said, boy, I need 5/8 radius, if I needed 5/32 radius, I'll say there's two options. You can order the hinges you need. The ones you have can't be returned. and they're going to be a lot of money and a lot of lead time for the new hinges, or put them on a bench grinder. And what the factory is doing, and I'm quite sure of it, one way or another, it's either by hand or with some sort of template, they're putting this corner on a grinder, and they're just nipping that off. I would imagine that they have a bit more sophisticated way of doing it, just bench grinding it. But if a customer walks in and needs a 4.5 by 4 inch hinge for aluminum storefront, and I don't have any in stock, which we do stock 5/32 radius. If I didn't have any in stock, I'd say, give me 5 minutes. I'll just go buzz these corners off for you. It's going to be really good. 99.9% of the time, that's really acceptable. Not advising that you do it, but nonetheless, that's really the heart of the matter. This also happens to be an NRP hinge. It's got the set screw, the evidence of the fact that once that set screw is in and turned all the way down, try as you might, but you're not going to get that pin out. I've tried. I mean, I've locked myself out of my office. The door from the office area swung into the shop. There was no other way to get into the office area where my desk is at so I can work. Walked out to the shop for something on a Saturday. Had no way to get back in. Pull side, which means the hinges were NRP. I could not get those hinge pins out of the hinge. I don't remember how I got back in. I may have spread the jamb open. But I tried. I was in the shop, so I had all the tools with me. I was on the shop side of the wall, but I could not drive that NRP pin out. So let's talk about this bevel hinge, because that's really, to me, the most interesting part. Let's talk about that now. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Let's take a bit more of a detailed look at this beveled edge swing clear hinge. So what we're seeing here is the jamb leaf is on the inside, meaning the jamb leaf, well, to me it is. This is the jamb leaf here. And you'll take note that when we study these two hinges, and again, bringing these leaves here parallel with each other, you'll see that the leaves vertically are not parallel. And that's because the outside leaf that my thumb is touching, that's going to go to the edge of the door. Well, the top of the hinge here would be the pull side of the opening, and as you can, I believe, and these hinges are not light, by the way, they weigh about 2 1/3 pounds each. It's heavy for a hinge. So when we bring those leaves parallel, okay, out here, this would be the pull side of the door, so that's why it would go away from the opening, because down here, this side would represent the small side of the door. Up here would represent the wide side of the door on a beveled door. The pull side is always the wide side of the door. And because of how the leaf needs to sit into the edge of the door, it absolutely matters how they put a bend on this hinge leaf. Now, can you make a square edge manufactured hinge work on a beveled edge door? It'll attach, it's just not going to sit flat. And can you use a beveled edge hinge on a square edge door? I would argue that you might run the risk of being hinge bound immediately. The bottom line is they're not compatible with each other. Like, yes, you can attach screws and slam the door closed and it'll work, but they make you, when you're ordering swing clear hinges, specify, is it a beveled edge door or is it a square edge door? You have to know that. At some point in the future, I just don't have time to do it right now. I will make an AutoCAD drawing demonstrating what it looks like when you use a beveled edge on a beveled hinge leaf on a square edge door and a square edge leaf on a beveled edge door. I'll post that at some point. Okay, so this is a T4A4395 5x5 with a 5/32 radius. I had talked about that earlier. That's really unusual. These may be the first and only swing clear hinge. Not only, but these are the first swing clear hinges that I've sold with a radius corner. We talked about, you know, how to really achieve that. A very small router bit that's routing aluminum. You're not going to go back and file that by hand. 3 different radiuses that you'll see: 5/32, 1/4 inch, and 5/8. Only 5/32 is what you'll see in aluminum storefront work. 1/4 inch and 5/8 you'll see in wood doors and wood frames, and hollow metal is always square corner. But aluminum, very often going to be radius corner, a 5/32 radius corner. So this client, again, project on the West Coast, aluminum storefront, not aluminum storefront, forgive me. They are for sure aluminum frames, and I believe they're using wide style aluminum doors on this job as well. Now, why swing clear? Let's talk about what swing clear gives you. Swing clear hinges are an incredibly important hinge type because you have a requirement of a free and clear minimum opening when it comes to doors being handicap compliant, or accessible, I should say. You have to have the ability to achieve a net opening when the door is at 90 degrees of a minimum of 32 inch. Now, and we'll switch to the screen view in a moment, and I'll show you kind of what a door looks like when it's rotated out, and how a standard door will encroach into the opening. But with a standard butt hinge, part of the heel edge of the door encroaches into the space. And if you can't achieve a net opening minimum of 32 inch, then what is done is, on a hinge, if this was a typical hinge, the hinge barrel would be right about here, which means the vertical axis of pivoting would be here. So on a swing clear hinge, they literally take that vertical axis of pivoting and they move it over what is in effect about 1 5/8 inches. So they really move it over darn near the entire thickness of the door, so that the door sits here. When I rotate the door to 90 degrees, okay, the door now resides in this space. Well, out over here, you're going to have the stop that's 5/8. So if there's a 1/4 inch hinge back set here, I just want to give you a dimension. Bear with me one moment. Yeah, there's about, from the rabbet of the frame where the hinge leaf is installed and this edge of the hinge, it's about 3/8 of an inch. You've got a 5/8, or well, in this case, it's probably a 1/2 inch blade stop of stop that's projecting into the opening, although it could be a different dimension. But let's just figure it's for sure 1/2 of an inch. That means that with a 1/4 inch back set, actually, yeah, it might be a 1/4 inch back set. You're going to have a very small amount, a nominal amount of 1/8 of an inch of the door encroaching into that space. So on a 36 inch wide door, there's no chance that you're going to get into the danger zone of encroaching into that space. With a 2'10" door, if you had a 2'10" door in standard butt hinges, it's likely that you're going to still be okay at a minimum dimension. But depending on the circumstances, depending on the thickness of the door and the projection of the stop, you might not be okay with a smaller door like that. So using swing clear hinges absolutely solves the problem on minimum door widths of achieving a net 32 inch clear opening. So what's really happening here is, let's say we had 2'10", you've got 1/2 inch. Let's say you have 2'10", 34 inch, and you've got 5/8 stops. That's 1¼ inch. So that's going to be 32 3/4. You encroach into the space ever so slightly with your door, you'll still be nominally okay with a 2'10" door and a standard hinge, allowing clearance. But I really can't say what they're using here, because they're not. I don't know the door width. They're not using 2'8". That's too small no matter what. 2'10", possibly, although that's unusual. If they're 3 foot and those doors are already compliant, I'm not sure why they're using swing clear hinges, but there's a reason that I'm just not privy to that they certainly are. So this will allow you to get that door clear out of the opening. It could also be a design issue. I've seen swing clear hinges used and Harmon hinges or pocket pivots, pocket hinges or pocket pivots used just when they want to get the doors out of the opening so that it's smooth with casework. It could be a scenario like that as well. Or they could have, maybe it's not a condition of accessible compliance requirement. It could just be a design issue where the doors need to get moved out of the opening so that, you know, maybe it's a fire, I don't think it's fire rated, but maybe it's something where there's casework that's going to be added because they want to make the frames disappear to a certain extent. So who knows the reason why they're doing it, but swing clear is going to be used for that accessibility compliance. Okay, let's switch to the screen view and let's take a closer look at some supporting information. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Let's start off by taking a look at some images that we have here. T4A4395, 32D RC532nd NRP. We'll take a look at what all that means when we look at the cut sheets. I'm going to say that just simply means that 5 is going to mean 5 inch. That's the height of the hinge. Swing clear hinges don't have a width indicated. It's all about the height. And then the part number will tell you the gauge of the leaf thickness. This happens to be a heavyweight. You know that when you see the 4 or 4A in the part number. Showing, here's some images of what the hinges look like, showing the door partially open. Be a cross-section view. Here's your frame leaf. You know, your stop is going to be here. This is your rabbet. Well, your rabbet will be here. It's your door leaf. You can see that it's beveled. The point is to bring these leaves parallel to each other. Okay. Let's also take a look at the next image that we have here. Bear with me one moment. You can see a little peek of the NRP there, or the set screw. This is going to show the door when it is open at basically, well, not basically, but what would be 180 degrees is what that's going to look like. That's when the door is 180 degrees. If you were, well, just showing you a different perspective on it. Showing the knuckle assembly, very clean assembly. You'll know that it's a heavyweight hinge when you see 4 bearing packets on a full mortise hinge. Standard weight hinges will have 2 bearing packets. Showing the door leaf here at that relief where it's beveled, and then your screw package. There's also a cut sheet. Let's take a look at this. Okay, so what they're telling us here is the T4A4395. It's a 5-knuckle heavyweight swing clear hinge. It's reversible. You can flip the hinge end for end. And this is a really great drawing of what I was attempting to speak about earlier. If you just ran an imaginary line, that door encroaches into the space very minimally. The bottom line is it has to be calculated, so what's done, the way that I would suggest reviewing it would be something more like this. So you have a frame, and when that door is basically open to 90 degree, a little out of whack here, but that's what it's kind of going to look like. What I would be measuring is the distance from here to there, to that face, to make sure that your dimension here is good. That's the clear opening. So depending on the projection of the stop, 1/2 inch, 5/8, 7/16, 3/4, whatever it is, this is what you're really trying to ascertain. Are you compliant? Okay, now this also tells us it's heavyweight. So in this hinge, that means it's going to be 190 thousandths thick because it's 5 inch tall. Recommended for use on high frequency and or heavy wood or metal doors in schools, hospitals, or other public buildings where heavy traffic is experienced. Maximum clearance for passage of beds, tables, and other equipment through a doorway. Wheelchairs. Meets ADA requirements of the A117.1 publication. I don't know that 1986 is the right, if that's a publication year. ADA wasn't passed into law until the early 90s. Don't quote me on that. I don't know if there was an A117.1. Oh, I see. Meets ADA requirements and this ANSI standard from 1986. I'm not familiar with this ANSI standard. This must be a hinge standard. A117.1 must be just a hinge reference, not incorporating any ADA requirement into it. Pressed steel jambs require no reinforcing. Pin is held in place by an NRP set screw, which allows the hinge to be reversible. So what they're saying is you can remove that set screw that's there, ultimately pop the button out and flip the pin over should you feel so compelled to do so, which you would, because when I hang a door, I would separate the two hinge leaves, attach one leaf to the frame, one leaf to the door, bring those together, and then drive the pin down. So if you need a square edge door, a hinge for a square edge door, you're going to use the T4A4395. Well, we've got beveled edge, so we're using a 4395. That means it's made of stainless steel. Obviously, satin stainless steel is what we're dealing with here. I'm sure that they can ultimately do polished. That would be even less typical than a 5/32 radius. And then all the standard finishes on a steel-based hinge. This client ordered all stainless steel. I don't know. It's very possible these are exterior applications or exposed to the elements. You can do ball bear. A TB is literally just a ball bearing hinge. It's your typical common classic ball bearing hinge. And now I recall, the A doesn't tell us that it's heavyweight. The 4 does. The A means oil impregnated, which is the friction reduced construction of McKinney hinges. When you see an A rather than a B, a TA or a T4A or a TB or a T4B, it'll basically be a superior hinge product to a ball bearing hinge. It reduces, I was told by an engineer at McKinney one time, it's 20% more efficient than a ball bearing hinge. You can do hospital tips. That would be a very common application for this hinge, less the 5/32 radius, where they're going to literally grind down the assembly of the hinge so as to prevent something from being put over the hinge barrel. And I'm going to show you what that looks like right here. That's a hospital tip. They've taken that, closed the hinge, and ground it down. The pins are non-removable at that point, but that's what it looks like. It prevents something from being looped on top of that. Any pressure on that's meant to allow that item that you've looped onto it to fall off. Ligature resistant, I think is the term. QC and CC. QC is going to be quick connectors, basically, in a through-wire type hinge, so that if you want to pass current through a hinge, you can do that. They'll have the Electrolinks connectors on it. So if you do all ASA Abloy products, exit devices, power supplies, hinges, all the cables, you can quick connect them all together. making the cost only marginally more than otherwise, than twisting and terminating wires one by one. You can also do concealed circuit, where you can do monitoring over the hinge. Is the hinge leaf open or closed, is basically what that is. Now, there is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page, which, if this was the actual hinge we were looking at, it'd be right here. And when you click on that, you'll be able to pull up not only all of the McKinney products we sell by means of this horizontal navigation, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the most current product catalog that you can review. Couple of things that I would want to point out to you. They have all of the regular culprits, the standard hinge line. I had mentioned the pocket hinge earlier. This is also used potentially in swing clear applications. I usually see it when someone just needs the door out of the way. Well, I see it in two instances: in swing clear in hospitals. So the next time you're in a hospital, hopefully not soon, you will, unless you're working, you will see these, and it does get the door really out of the pocket, so much so that it's flush with the wall. A swing clear hinge is not going to do that. So really good design. The other time I've seen it is when in a hotel, actually here in town, they've used pocket hinges because they applied trim to the wall that they wanted to run continuous on the door, so that when the doors were in the open position, you kind of couldn't tell that they were doors. So really helpful. The other thing I wanted to point out to you is, I'm not sure if it's in the full catalog. Yeah, they are. They have square barrel hinges, which are really neat. And the reason I point out square barrel hinges is because, let's see if I have a template. Okay. Yeah, so this is what the hinge looks like when it's closed. This dotted dashed line here, and when it's open. Now, you get the concept that if you have a beveled edge door, not only will the leaves not be parallel, but the two-knuckle nature of the hinge will not be even. So basically, when you look at the hinge, you'll have, there'll be a situation where well, they won't be dashed lines, forgive me. All right, you get the concept now where your knuckles won't be aligned. So it's really important that you know that you're dealing with square or beveled edge doors in all instances, and you need to be mindful of what you're dealing with, because it can and will affect your hardware. If someone wants a square edge hinge, it's because they're going for a very particular look, and having beveled edge doors would ruin that look, is just the bottom line. And there's no way to really account for that. I think that this is a situation because these are likely cast. And as a result, I guess they can't modify the working of that hinge leaf. The rest of the catalog I would recommend you review. Olive knuckle hinges, they're not uncommon. They have concealed hinges, and they have concealed energy transfer hinges as well. Last 20 years or so, probably more than that, 25 years, three-way adjustable concealed hinges have been extremely popular and common. McKinney obviously has those. Cam lift hinges they have as well. If you're doing STC rated openings, you'll very often see cam lift hinges, and it's because the weight of the door and all the hardware forces the door against the face of the gasketing that's there. If you are in Manhattan and you are on Broadway, look at the exterior metal doors that swing out. As emergency exits, they will be cam lift hinges. Let's wrap up this video on camera. Now, in conclusion, if you have any questions on the T4A4395 5-inch NRP 5/32 630 swing clear hinge or any other McKinney product, please feel free to reach out to us. I would add that there's been a couple of times that I've spoken to that engineer I had mentioned earlier at McKinney, and I'm not sure there's one person I know of in the hinge world, maybe two, that I believe can go toe-to-toe with her in terms of product knowledge. She is just not only thoroughly expert on the subject matter, but can present it to you in such a way that is really commonsensical, in the sense of when talking about double-acting spring hinges and why you have to have a minimum door height, otherwise you can get squeaking. If you have a short door and they're 3 foot wide, 2 hinges rated for 75 pounds or 3 hinges rated for 75 pounds with a 20-pound hinge panel can still squeak, and it's because of the distribution of weight. And the way that this person at McKinney, this isn't a quote, but it's like this. It's easier to hold 20 pounds on the top of your head than it is 5 pounds at arm's length. So it's just breaking it down into simple, non-technical terms is the gift that person has. And to her, for that, I say thank you. Any questions on this or any other McKinney product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.